Why didn't he hang out with other people? I don't know. Maybe because he was shy. Maybe he's introverted. Maybe because he just didn't like other people. Maybe it's because he didn't feel like he fit in. Maybe because he refused to compromise himself so that he could fit in. Maybe he's one of those weirdos who spends a lot of time in solitude and you don't even know it yet, but he's got a hit song that's gonna come out in a few years. He's got a great movie. He's got a book he's working on, or at least in his head, even if he's not writing it yet. Maybe it won't come out for 20 more years. Maybe he's that artist. Maybe he's that leader. Maybe, who knows? But I do know one thing. This is a person who wouldn't, at least on the appearance, somehow compromise himself to belong to a group. And those are people who we find to be dangerous. When we see people who belong to a group, they're not dangerous to us anymore. In fact, because they're predictable. And we know that they won't go outside the bounds of their group because then they won't be accepted by their group anymore. It's the people who really, genuinely don't care, or not that they don't care if they're accepted, but they're willing to not be accepted. In order to live by yourself, you either have to be a beast or you have to be a god. I would suggest to you that there is a third option. You could be both together in one person, which is to say you could be a philosopher. Sorry, so I guess the question is, what do you learn when your parents say, I'm just going to take that toy away from both of you? Well, you learn that there is no such thing as justice, at least not in that situation, because why do your parents want you to stop fighting? Are they curious about justice? No. They want to find out who did the right thing, who did the wrong thing? What do they want?
For you to shut up.
They want you to shut up, dude. I don't care, just shut up. And so you learn at that point that peace is preferable to noise. It's better to have quiet than it is to have justice. And I wonder how many times you can learn that lesson in your life before you start to think the exact same thing. And we'll say that way as we get older. Man, I thought my parents were so unfair, but then when I get older, I understood. Does that make them more fair, though? In other words, what is it that we're teaching? Because we're always teaching something. We're always modeling something. We're always modeling some kind of behavior. I'm asking that question about why it is that we do those things that we do, or ways that we learn those lessons. I know I kind of cut it short, but we've got family. We learn from our family. We learn from our parents. We learn our values from them. We learn from our friends, the people that we're around. And it isn't so clear that we learn our values from our friends. It might very well be that our friends kind of reinforce those values. In other words, if you have friends who have completely different values from you, but you can be around them and not be influenced by them, that's the hard part. If instead you're surrounded by people with really bad values, and then you start to do what they do, then it might just be the case that you have very weak character.
Easily influenced.
Exactly. And where do you think something like that might come from? Yeah.
You want validation.
Exactly. Now we're getting to the it's, the deeper questions. Why am I going along with these things? I want validation. I think it's cool. Why? Because I want validation. Why? Because I want to belong. Why? Because being alone sucks. And it's one thing to say, man, I don't care what people think about me, but we still join sports teams, don't we? We still seek validation. Well, that's just kind of like the sport. Yeah, but you hang out with the people on the team. You still want that camaraderie. We hang out with friends. I mean, nobody likes to be that one person who's by themselves. And by the way, if we do see that one person who is by themselves, what do we think about that person in the hallway?
He's a loser.
Yeah, he's a loser. Look at that guy. He's not by himself. I wouldn't want to be that guy. There was a guy, I can say it now, he used to stand outside of my room. He did it for 2 years, last year and the year before that. Before school, he'd be out there. He had a mask on. He would always have, like, his hair was kind of low, so you couldn't see his face very well. He would always wear a hoodie, even if it was warm out. Taller guy, always had his hands in his pockets. And year before last, he was out there. He was out there last year. And year before last, after he's out there for a couple weeks or so, I walked by, I asked him what his name was. He told me. I said, okay. I said, I've been seeing you out here, so I want to be able to say hi to you when I walk by. And he just kind of, never really talked, but just kind of like nodded. And then every morning I'd walk past him in the morning, I'd say good morning to him, and he would nod to me. And then in the afternoon I'd see him, I'd nod to him. So lunch, before school, he was always out there, and he did it again last year. One time one of my students asked me, why do you always say hi to that guy? I said, you're welcome. Why were they asking me something like that? What were they implying?
Like, why are you interacting with this?
Why would it be strange for me to interact with this person? He's a weirdo. He's by himself. Can you believe that that guy hangs out by himself and doesn't hang out with other people? Now, why didn't he hang out with other people? I don't know. Maybe because he was shy. Maybe he's introverted. Maybe because he just didn't like other people. Maybe it's because he didn't feel like he fit in. Maybe because he refused to compromise himself so that he could fit in. Maybe he's one of those weirdos who spends a lot of time in solitude and you don't even know it yet, but he's got a hit song that's gonna come out in a few years. He's got a great movie. He's got a book he's working on, or at least in his head, even if he's not writing it yet. Maybe it won't come out for 20 more years. Maybe he's that artist. Maybe he's that leader. Maybe, who knows? But I do know one thing. This is a person who wouldn't, at least on the appearance, somehow compromise himself to belong to a group. And those are people who we find to be dangerous. When we see people who belong to a group, they're not dangerous to us anymore. In fact, because they're predictable. And we know that they won't go outside the bounds of their group because then they won't be accepted by their group anymore. It's the people who really, genuinely don't care, or not that they don't care if they're accepted, but they're willing to not be accepted. Those are the scary people, because the herd, most people kind of gather together as a herd so that, for protection. Social protection, emotional protection, physical protection in some cases as well, of course. This is the foundation of gangs. And they all bind together. But what that means is that you have to compromise part of who you are to belong to any group. If you're pro-abortion, you can't be part of the Republican Party. Well, I guess you can be in a sense, but your belief is so contrary to them that you have to put that aside to belong to that group. If you're anti-abortion, you can't belong to the Democratic Party, or I guess you can again, but you have to put that view aside. You have to put that part of yourself aside. You have to put another part of yourself aside, and then another part of yourself aside. And I wonder how many parts of your side you can put, how many parts of yourself that you can put aside before you're no longer you, and you've put so much of yourself aside that all you've done is just like melded in, and there's no longer you. There's only an us, or actually a them, because you don't really belong to them. But not that anybody in the group actually does. You just kind of blend in, and then now you no longer exist. It's like you've gone into an oblivion. But of course, then there's the other side. If you don't belong to any group because you refuse to compromise those parts of yourself, what's your life? Well, you're going to be pretty alienated. You'll be isolated a lot of the times. You'll spend a lot of time in solitude. It doesn't mean you'll have no friends, but your tribe's going to be very small. And I guess at that point the question is, what do you want? A bigger tribe, or are you okay with a smaller tribe? And that's what it is. It's going to have to be okay with, not to cultivate it. Because that one person who's by themselves, again, they're dangerous. What are they going to do? I don't know.
Shoot at the school.
Yeah, why do you suppose I said to my class, "You're welcome"?
Because he's wearing all black, a hoodie, and doesn't talk to anybody.
Yeah, didn't talk to anybody. This guy's bitter. This guy's angry. This guy's resentful. I don't know. I never saw him smile. I never saw his face. That dude could walk in here right now. In fact, that dude, no, it's actually not true because I know his name. I was going to say that guy could be in this classroom right now and I wouldn't recognize him because his mask wouldn't be on. But I actually knew, at least I know what he told me his name is, and nobody in here has that name. But he could very well be a senior right now who is in a different class, who no longer wears his mask, and he just doesn't hang out there anymore. Or maybe he does, and I just don't recognize him because he's not wearing the mask anymore. I don't know. But the point is that to live, to be like that, to live by yourself, we're social creatures. So when we say you're just compromising yourself to belong to a group, yeah, that's like the normal thing to do. And by the way, that's not always a terrible thing. If you sit there and you're thinking like, what do you want to do this weekend? I don't know, I think I want to, you want to go to the beach? Yeah, let's go to the beach. What do you want to do? Let's plan a mass murder. Really, bro? We were going to go to the beach, you want to do that? Oh, I'm just kidding, I wouldn't do that. And then you conform yourself to a society that doesn't condone mass murder. I only bring that up because, we always got to go to death in here. But it could be any kind of a weird behavior or any kind of a deviant behavior. We learn how to be because we conform ourselves. The question is, which group are you conforming yourself to? And does it actually reflect your real values? Because to be by yourself, there are those people who are completely willing to be by themselves. It's not, maybe they enjoy it, but then there's no victory in that. If you're a person who really wishes you could connect with people, but it's so hard to, I'll tell you that to be by yourself, you either have to be, well, actually it's Aristotle. He said in order to live by yourself, you either have to be a beast or you have to be a god. I would suggest to you that there is a third option. You could be both together in one person, which is to say you could be a philosopher. And so, yeah. So what are your values? Are you willing to live by them? And are you willing to, or do you realize that sometimes your values have to be compromised because it helps to shape you into a positive character? I don't know. But I do realize that I'm looking at this list, what makes us what we are? Family, friends, parents, school, society. When we say society, I always want to fold my arms and scratch my chin and go, yeah, society. Whatever that means, because don't we surround ourselves with our own society? My guess is that the society that you surround yourself with is very different from the one I choose to surround myself with. So maybe the society that we're surrounded by largely reflects us. Maybe. Especially as you get older and you have more choices. But there's one thing missing from this, and it's almost always missing when I talk with people. The self. Where do your values come from? Oh, it's all the external influences. It's everything working on me. Is society working on you? Yeah, family, friends, all of that, true. But the question I have for you is how much are you working inside of yourself to develop those things, to develop your own character? The world's going to happen to you. What are you going to do with what happens to you, though? Are you going to use it to build yourself up in a way that you decide, the way that you author? Or are you going to scratch your chin and frown and say, I can't be otherwise because my mom didn't hug me enough when I was younger? Did your mom hug you enough when you were younger? Did your mom hug you too much when you were younger? I don't know. And in either of those two situations, genuinely, I feel sorry for you. I really do. Genuinely, I do. But here's the question: what do you do with it now? That's the hand that you were dealt. You can't go back and reshuffle the cards. And at some point, we have to give up our hope for a better past. And we have to take the present that we have and make something positive out of it. Or, I guess we don't have to. We could just sit there and frown and be full of resentment and contempt, but it's not going to make your life any better, man. What makes your life better is how you perceive the world around you, how it is that you deal with the world that you're in. And now that's scary for a lot of us because that means you're free. That's the freedom. I might have told you guys this once before, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but life is suffering. And you don't get to choose not to suffer, but you can choose what you suffer for. That's freedom. To find something that makes it worthwhile so that it can transcend the sufferings and the tragedies of life. And so if you can find those things, man, that's freedom. And you have the freedom to look for those things. But you also have the freedom to settle into the negativity and the tragedy and say, everything is horrible and terrible, and I'm a product of that. And then you can say, we don't deserve dogs.
Yeah.
People who say that, by the way, have never encountered dogs in the wild. It's just like if you think you can walk up to a polar bear and give them loveys, nuzzle him and pet him and everything like that. You're in for a rude awakening when you encounter nature, and that's part of the danger when we encounter our own nature as well. So, we have to bridle it. We have to bring it. To heal our own natures, and make something positive of ourselves, if something positive is to be made of us at all. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?